Hi, welcome everybody. So we're going to begin now with our CP 4472 course. This course includes emerging trends as well as workplace preparation, and it's a replacement for the work term that you would normally be doing at this time. So I'm really excited about this course because I think that there's some really important skills that you might not otherwise get a chance to learn throughout your time at the college that I can now kind of include in this course. There's quite a bit of flexibility with this course. So I've emailed everybody an outline for some of the topics I'm going to be looking at covering. And the topics kind of fall into one of two categories. They're either going to be an emerging trend category, which basically I'm going to use this as a programming category, or it could be a workforce prep item. So that could be something like a resume, or preparing for a job interview, or working on your LinkedIn profile. These things would be included under that category. And what I'm hoping to do with this course is kind of bring these two, what seemingly different topics, kind of bring them together, okay? So some of the emerging trends, some of the skills we'll work on, we're going to make sure that those skills are ones that are going to really benefit you the most when you're looking to get a job. And these are skills that we can show off, so when you're applying for a job, you'll make sure that you're recognized and have a good chance of getting selected for an interview. So anyway, let's move on now with what we're going to start with. And basically I want to start today with version control. We'll just talk really briefly about what it is. And also, in terms of version control, the type of version control, or the system, the program, I guess, that I'm going to demonstrate and teach you in this course and you'll start using is called Git. As well, there is a website, a company called GitHub, that will host a remote repository that uses the Git version control system. And this is a really great option for hosting your software, and also you can make your repository public so that other people can see what you're working on and follow some of your work. And you can of course also follow and look at what some other people might be working on. Okay, so let's just basically, I'll wrap things up here. Let's now move to the computer and we'll go through, I plan to go through a very fairly short introductory exercise that will show you how to set Git up on your Windows computer. As well, we'll walk you through a few of the steps for setting up a repository on GitHub. You'll have to go and set up a GitHub account on your own, and then you'll be able to follow all of these steps. All right, let's get started. So probably the first thing I should talk about, just as an introductory thing, is what is version control? I kind of expect that you guys probably already know exactly what version control is or have a good idea, but just in case, this might be a new topic to some of you as well. So I don't want to assume too much knowledge about anything. And version control essentially is just a way of keeping track of all of the history of all of your changes as you develop a project or some type of software, for example. So not only will it tell you all the work that you've done, but it also gives you the ability to compare different versions, to also remove certain changes. It gives you the ability to work on a new feature or several new features all in parallel. It's a very, very powerful tool. And probably one of the easiest ways to illustrate the power of it is many of you have probably been in the situation where you've had some sort of project you've been working on, and you're basically you just have a flat file. You open the file, you edit. Maybe it's a JavaScript program, maybe it's a calculator, JavaScript, I don't know, ring a bell, but you have this file and it seems like it works. You're doing a good job, you're making progress, and you go in one day and maybe you make a couple hours worth of changes. And now you go and it's completely broken. Okay, and this is a common problem I'm sure you guys have run into on a lot of your assignments. And the issue becomes, now you have to go and try to figure out, well, how did I break this? Where's the change? And it might be a really small change, or maybe you made several mistakes that over the past few hours as you've been editing your project have pretty much broken everything. And it's a very confusing thing to have happen. Well, if you're using version control, all you have to do is run a command that basically compares the current version with the last committed version. And you can see each of the edits you've made one by one. And you can quickly verify, okay, that looks like a correct change, that change, oh, here's a change that's causing problems. So that's just one advantage right there. Another one, of course, if anyone's ever lost, and I'm sure you guys have all had this happen, you may have lost some work. Whether it was an assignment that you forgot to save, you'd maybe done some work and you forgot to save it, or maybe you had a file and somehow that file went missing, your computer crashed. There can be all kinds of reasons for that. If you're using version control and it's set up properly, then typically you're going to have a backup that you can access if you were to, for example, have your computer crash. And the way that this example I'm gonna show you today sets up Git is we create a local repository, but then we basically take that local repository and we set it up on GitHub, which is a remote repository. So now we have some redundancy there. So if, for example, my local computer crashes, I'm not going to lose any of my previous work as long as I've committed that work and pushed it to the remote repository. So that's another really, really big advantage that it offers. The other big one, and this one's a little bit harder for me to demonstrate. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I will do a few very brief examples, but let's say you're working on a larger project. Maybe you have 10, 20 people working on a project together. And that means that people might be working on the same files, or you might even have amongst that project 2 or 3 different goals or basically steps taking place at the same time. Maybe half of your team is working on fixing bugs, whereas another half of the team is working on adding a new feature. And the problem is if everyone works on these things at the same time, they're going to end up stepping on each other's toes essentially. So one of the great things that version control has is what's called a branch. So that means that everyone who's working on bugs, they could be working on a special branch that would only be for fixing bugs. Then the people working on the new feature, they would work on a branch that is only for the new feature. And when both of these things are complete, they would then take their branches and they would merge them back into the master branch, okay? And then once they've done that, they would delete their branches and all of their history would be included in the master branch. And that way, only when someone is done and they've verified that their work is correct, would that code actually come into the main line of development. So as someone's adding a new feature, they're probably going to be breaking things, experimenting with things, and you don't want that to affect other developers on the team. So this is a really big feature. And Git in particular is designed around this idea of branching. Anytime you want to make a new change or a feature, you're going to want to create a separate branch so that way your changes aren't going to affect other people until your changes are complete and they've been verified, and now you can merge them back in. Okay, so let's actually now sort of transition here to doing this exercise. And one of the great things about Git is that it's so popular that you can find tons and tons of resources and tutorials and YouTube videos and etc. So that's a really great advantage. And now the process I'm going to show you today is a very, very simple one. And I really hope that you guys will on your own go and look up some similar tutorials and read through and maybe practice a few of the commands and do some research on your own. Git is a fairly large tool, even though what it does, essentially is a very simple task. There is quite a bit of complexity built into it, and you really need to start using it every day to get familiar with it. If you only use Git when I'm teaching this class, it's just not, you'll gain some skills, but if you don't start using it every day for all of your development, it's just not going to really stick with you guys. So, okay, let's just not talk way too much. Let's now get into doing some work here. So first one is install Git and create a GitHub account. All right, so follow instructions here to install Git. All right, so we've got a bunch of different options based on our operating system. In this case, I'm installing on Windows, so I would simply go and download the Windows installer. It's kind of big. So once that's downloaded, then I will go and basically run it. It's going to ask me for a few different commands, different options I want. I'll basically just pick the default ones, and then I'll have Git running on my computer. Now, the second step that we'll do to set up and run GitHub, you don't actually need to do that. However, usually that's the most common workflow that people use, is they have a local repository that they clone from the remote repository. They do all their work locally, and then they push those changes to the remote. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna run my installer, and let's see what I get here. All right, so basically we see here that there's a bunch of different options. I'm gonna leave these options as the default. It's just talking about associating different files. What type of integration in terms of the Git GUI and Git Bash. We'll see those in a bit, but these are the default options, they're fine. What type of text editor would you like to use? I'm gonna use Vim. Wow, am I? So the Vim editor, while powerful, can be hard to use. The user interface is unintuitive and the key bindings are awkward. Okay, so I think I've talked about this in class before, that there's sort of like different types of programmers out there, right? And I admit that I'm a GUI person. I like to use the mouse, I like to click on buttons, and I do not like to use text editors. I just have never gotten into it. However, it is a very valuable skill. So we are gonna use Vim. All right, we're gonna do some Vim. And it's an impressive skill, and I know a lot of really strong programmers that they have really advanced skills using these type of editors and terminals. And I think my background as a game programmer, I haven't had to sort of get really like great at these types of tools. I only have to use them occasionally. But in your guys' careers, there's a good chance that these skills will be more important to you. So we're gonna use Vim, and I'll show you guys a few things about that. And it's definitely a cool thing. It's a really cool skill to have. So I'm kind of excited about that. Okay, so here we go. How would we like to use Git? Git from the command line and also third-party software. So this is recommended. So it's gonna modify our path. That way when we type in Git in a terminal, it's gonna know what we're talking about. You'll be able to use Git from Git Bash, the command prompt, and the Windows PowerShell. Okay, so that's fine. We'll just go with that. What type of SSL TLS library? Okay, we'll just use the default OpenSSL. All right, so now they're talking about line endings. So we'll just go with the default here for Windows style line endings of our files. That's just basically saying, based on the operating system, there's gonna be different line endings depending upon whether you're on Linux or Windows, etc. And the version control system is going to handle these type of changes for us based on the settings we choose. Not really important at this stage, so I'm gonna go with the default. And then it's gonna ask us what type of terminal editor do you want to use? So I'm gonna use, okay, so I can use Minty, or I can use the Windows default console window. Okay, so we'll go with the default here. This looks like, I'm not super, this comes back to being a powerful terminal programmer. This looks like it's quite a bit more powerful than using the Windows console. So I'm definitely gonna go with that. Okay, Git credential, okay. File system caching, fine, that doesn't look too important. I'll click install. And here we go, it's just gonna run through the installer, set up my Git. And once that's done, we'll be able to open up the Minty terminal. and we can start doing Git right away. We can create a folder where we want to do our work, and yeah, it looks like it's gonna work well. Okay, so I'm gonna launch the Git bash as well. Okay, so this terminal here is a little bit different. You also have, if I type in command, okay, so you have your Windows command prompt, and we could do Git stuff here. It added it to the path, so if I type in Git, it knows about Git. However, this terminal is a little bit more powerful. It's a bit more of a, this is what we should be using probably. So we're gonna go with that. So this, we can use Git here for this. Okay, so let's go back now to the actual tutorial. So I installed Git, and I already have a GitHub account. So you guys are gonna want to do this as well. Now I will post the link to this tutorial. You're gonna go and set up your own GitHub account. And that step is very simple to do. Okay, so we're actually gonna start doing some Git. Now, the actual project I'm thinking about walking you guys through, and I still have time to change this, but I'm thinking I'm gonna create a JavaScript Connect 4, okay? Connect 4 is a pretty fun game. It's something we can put in a browser. It's just something that popped into my head. I was thinking about doing concentration, but there's just so many people doing concentration JavaScript development, because it's a fun game. But I think the Connect 4 is pretty good, and it should also be fairly easy to hook up some simple AI to have it play against you, okay? Now keep in mind, this project we're doing, I'm gonna walk you through it. So I'm not expecting you guys to go in and code up Connect 4 on your own. I'm gonna be leading you guys through it. I want you guys following along with what I'm doing, and also doing your work using Git and having a GitHub remote repository where I can then follow along with your progress. We're not gonna start Connect 4 today. We're just gonna practice some setup here. Okay, so I'm gonna create a Git repository. So I'm gonna go in my terminal, and now this is what's called essentially a bash terminal. So it runs commands, it runs bash commands. So you're probably like a little lost with what I'm saying there. So bash commands. Basically, these are file system commands that a lot of operating systems use in their terminals. Now, Windows, typically, we don't use these type of commands in Windows. We use a different set of commands, but when we use bash, these are the commands we use. So cd, change directory, make directory, touch will create a file, ls will list all the files. Really, really simple, easy commands to use. So I am going to go pwd. Let's see. Okay, so I'm in C users user. I'm going to go cd / ... And now if I go pwd, okay, so now I'm just in the root of the hard drive. So I'm going to make a new directory, and I'm going to call this Connect 4. Okay, so I've got that set up, and let's see here. So if we're looking at the commands that they have, I might want to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So they're actually going to the desktop, and then they're making a directory, and then they're using the cd command to change into that directory. So I'm going to change to that directory, cd connect 4. Okay, and if I go ls, there's no files in that directory right now. So now I am going to initialize a Git repository by running a command called git init. So git init. And you can see here, we've initialized an empty Git repository. Okay. So now I'm going to add a new file to the repo. So to create a file, there's a command in bash called touch, and this just creates an empty file. So I'm going to create a file here, and all I do is I type in touch, and I'm going to name this file eric.txt. So it's just going to be a text file. For demonstration purposes, I'm not going to be writing any code in this file or anything right now. So I create that file, and that's great. We've got the file. So these basically what this tutorial is doing is just introducing us to the most basic commands. Now, any of these commands, if you want more information on them, you can type in git help init, for example. Okay, that was the command we just last used. And there we go. It pulls up a manual page. Now, there's probably a way that I would get it also in the terminal. But basically, you can see there's some different options here. There's a description of the actual command, and then we see a bunch of different options. Okay, so I encourage you guys to use if you see a command here and you're not sure what does that exactly do, or I'd like to know a little bit more about that command. Go in to the manual page, and you can easily find out more information about this. Okay. All right, so we've got that file created, and now the next one we want to do is git status. So git status is going to tell us if we've made any changes or if there's anything interesting going on in our repository. And right now we get a message that says we have an untracked file, and this file is called eric.txt. Well, of course, right? I just added it. It's sitting here. Now, basically, right now, Git is ignoring this file. It doesn't know anything about it. All it knows is there's just a file there, okay? So if this file is going to become an important file, we're going to want to add it to the repository. Okay, so basically we're going to do that. Is it telling me to do that? So it says git status, then. So what it basically says is, hey, we noticed you create a new file, but unless you use the git add command, we aren't going to do anything with it. So if we want Git to keep track of this file, the next command we add is going to be git add, okay? And that is going to stage what's called staging, okay? And there's a bunch of different concepts related to Git. This is going to stage the file. So it says that this file is something important, and we now are going to have Git look at it, and we're preparing to do what's called a commit. And you can see the definition here. A commit is a record of what files you've changed since the last times you've made a commit. So essentially, you work on files. When they're ready, you commit them to the repository. Okay, so to get everything ready, we want to basically stage this file so that it'll be ready to commit. And to do that, we're going to add the file. So we're going to use the add command. I'm just trying to see whether, I don't want to get too far ahead here. So git commit, okay. Okay, so I'm going to do the command here. So git add, and then the file name is eric.txt, okay? So I've done that, and now if I go git status, there we go. Now, notice the file is now in green. So that means that I've added a new file, and it's called eric.txt. Now, still at this point, if someone else was working on the repository, they had their own copy, they would still not know about this file. The file has only been staged. I haven't actually committed it yet to the repository. So that's the next step that I will do. Okay, so we're going to create our first commit, and this will now, once we've executed this command will now show up in the history of the repository. So if someone were to go, maybe a year from now, if this Connect Fork game really takes off, someone will come back and they'll see this was the first commit, the first change that Eric made when he created this game. So to do this, I'm going to run git commit, and we're seeing this for the first time, this -m. And that's basically a flag, an additional option that I'm going to add to the command. Now I could go git help commit, and we can look up exactly what that option is. So here's git commit, and we see all these optional options like -a, -u, okay, all kinds of them. So you can see it's a fairly complex tool. Now the option that we're doing is -m right here, message. So -m is short form for message, and basically it's going to take whatever string we enter after the -m, and it's going to use that as the message that gets saved with the commit. Okay, so let's go back and we'll actually do the commit now. So git commit -m. This is my first commit. I added eric.txt file. Okay, there we go. And there it is. The commit completed successfully. If there were any errors, I would get a warning or an error message. But basically, this file has now been added. And if I go git status, you'll notice that there's no new files or no files have been changed. And that's because this has now been committed. Now, if I were to also go git log, I would see that I have a commit that I made, only one commit, and you see the message from that commit. Okay. So basically, we're just running through some of the most simple, the most basic commands that you would use. And we've done add, we've done init, we've done status, and we've now done commit. Okay. So the next one is creating a branch. So this command is probably a little bit, we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit because you don't actually need to use branches. You could just edit your files and then commit them. And if you were working on a project all by yourself, you'd be fine to just use add files, commit them, add files, commit them, right? That would be fine. Only if you're working in a team of a group of people and you're all collaborating does branching become necessary. However, it's probably a good idea for you to use branches anytime you're using Git, because if you practice doing it kind of the wrong way, like it sort of is the wrong way to just what I just showed there, where you add a file, you commit it, add a file, commit it. If you practice doing it that way, then when you get a job, right, it's going to be weird making all these branches. So it's important that you want to get comfortable using branches because that is the workflow with Git. So in this case, we're going to follow these steps here and we're going to create a branch. And the command to do that is right here. It's git checkout -b. The -b tells us that we're going to switch to a branch and we're going to create this new branch. And then we put in the name of the branch. So I go git checkout -b, and I'm going to call it new feature. Okay, so we can see here we've switched to a new branch called new feature. So now, basically the code on the main line of development, the master is what it's called, we're not going to be making any changes to that. And that's a good thing. Because often when you're making a new feature, you're going to be breaking, making aggressive changes. You could break the project for a while, right? So anyone who's developing and is on working on the main branch, they might update one day and then realize that the changes I made broke everything for them. So that's why it's best for me to use a master until I'm done with my changes and then I merge it back. Okay. So I've got my new branch and I've switched to it now. So now if I go git status, it says here I'm on branch new feature. So that means that any changes I make are only going to affect my branch, and that's what I want, right? Because if I was on the master still, I'd be worried. I'd be scared. Well, what if I make a change and then the senior developer comes in and my change breaks everything, right? Now I don't have to worry about that. Right? I don't have to worry about that until I go to merge it back in. But there's a lot of safety checks that will take place when I go to merge my changes back in to the master. All right, so we've got that done. We've created the branch. Okay, so now we're going to switch and we're going to do a bit of GitHub stuff. And, that's fine. We could just keep using Git. You can use Git locally on your computer. You don't actually have to use GitHub with it. You could also there's other remote repositories that you could set up. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to configure it. but doing it using GitHub is kind of a no-brainer. And when we come to doing our workplace prep, I think it's gonna be a really powerful step to sort of promote yourself using your GitHub account. So we're gonna go through and do this. So I'm gonna go to my GitHub, okay? Now my GitHub really isn't maybe the best example, and I'll probably try to like fix it up and make it look a little bit better, and also I'll try to follow some other programmers. I kind of just use my GitHub just for school now. So that's something that I can improve to show you guys a better example of how your GitHub should be set up. If you're going to be looking more for a job, you want to have an impressive looking GitHub account. So I'm going to go to, okay, I'm on my home, and I can now go, there's this new button here. So I can go and I'm going to create a new repository. So connect 4. And for a description, I can just say this, I am developing a JavaScript Connect 4 game, okay? And I'm gonna wanna make my repository public. So I want other people to see my code, see my development, okay? And that's a really important thing. Doing all this work, there's no point in making a private Connect 4 game. That would be a complete waste of time. I mean, like, why would I do that, right? You want to share your code with others. You want to promote yourself. So doing this is making it public is really important. All right, now it gives you the option here of adding something called a git ignore and adding a license. So basically, git ignore, when you create a Git account, there's all kinds of files. You might have all kinds of what are called metadata files, or you might have files that are generated from build scripts, and you don't want those files, especially if it's a computer generated file. You don't want it in your repository, because every time you make a build, you're gonna see all these files change, and they really don't have much meaning for the repository. So what you do is you create what's called a git ignore file, and you add different file extensions and different file names, and then they'll never be added to your project. We don't have to worry about that right now though, because we're just beginning. And then the other thing is you can add a license, and you should always add a license to any software that you're going to post publicly. And probably the most common license to add is what's called an MIT license. It's the least restrictive of all of the licenses. And it's just very simple. It's basically, here's my code. You can use it for pretty much any purpose you want. And that's typically what I would choose. So right now though, I'm just gonna go ahead because I want this to be as simple as possible, and I'm just gonna click Create Repository. All right, and so I've got my repository, and right now there's no code. I don't have anything set up for it. The only thing I have now is I have this URL that basically points to my public repository. So it's https github.com ericstock78 connect4.git is the location of my repository. So let's go back now to our tutorial, and it basically told us to create a repository, to give it a name, to give it a description, make it public. We did all that. Okay. Now the next thing that this tutorial does is it says that, and we'll follow this as well, that we could have created that repository from scratch, or we could push what we've just created to that remote repository. So to do that, let's see here, what do we have to do here? So we use this command here, git remote add origin https github.com, so that's their repository. So in other words, what this command does is it's basically saying that we're going to now take the GitHub we created locally, and we're going to link it with a remote repository. And the remote repository is the one that we're using for this URL. So I'm going to do that same command here. I'm going to go git remote add origin, And I'm gonna, okay, so I need to copy that. Did I not copy that? Okay, I'm not good at, okay, there we go, paste, okay. So there we go, git remote add origin, connect4.git. Okay, so what that does is that's now linked it. So now whenever I type in origin, origin is going to refer to my repository. So it's a shortcut. I don't have to type in https, github.com, blah, 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 okay? I can just type in origin and it knows what I mean. So now the next step that I can do is I can use this command here, git push -u origin master. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of stuff here. So let's just go through the command. So git push. Push is basically a command. Well, let's look it up. So git help push. So it's going to update a remote reference. So in other words, if I'm working on my local copy and I make some commits, if I want to send those commits to another repository, I'm going to use the push command, okay? It's as simple as that. So it's a fairly simple command. You guys can go in and read about it a bit more, of course. But it updates remote references using local references while sending objects necessary for this. Okay. So that's the first part, git push. Now the next one is -u, and that's an option. And what that means is that means upstream. That means I'm pushing this upstream. Okay? And okay, I'm gonna go back to the help. So we might as well look up the actual option, and the option is -u right here. And you can see that -u is a short form for set upstream. And of course, you're probably wondering, what does set upstream mean exactly? Basically, it means that I'm pushing from my local to the remote. So it says here, for every branch that is up to date or successfully pushed, add upstream tracking reference used by argumentless git pull and other commands. Okay, so yeah, that's a bunch of, there's a lot there. But basically we're saying that we're taking it from our local and we're pushing it to the remote, which is what's called upstream in Git, essentially. Okay, so I'm gonna go git push -u origin, and the branch I'm gonna push is going to be called master. So I'm pushing the master branch. Now, as you guys know, we have one commit on our master branch, and that was adding the eric.txt file. So I'm gonna go and push that, and there we go, that was successful. Now, if I go back to my GitHub, if I refresh this, I will now see that I have a file here that's under my version control, and it's called eric.txt. And I have one commit, so I can click on that commit, and I see that ericstock78 committed 13 minutes ago. I added this file, and that was that commit. And you can also see the comment from that commit. This is my first commit. I added eric.txt file. So we've successfully taken our local repository and we've moved it to our remote GitHub account. Now, in some cases, we may have worked on this project for, a year or more. And we may have just worked locally. And at some point, we decided to place this in a remote repository. We would have done the same process. We would have pushed basically the master branch to the origin or to whatever the remote GitHub is, just like I've done. All right. Now, when you guys go to do this, let's... there is a file that contains your user settings. So we're going to now talk a little bit about Vim. So Vim is like the hardcore text editor. And I'm really happy to be able to teach this. I'm kind of excited about it. And I admit this isn't a skill that I possess, in great quantities. I don't like using these crazy text editors or terminal multiplexers or any of this stuff, right? I just want to get to making my game. But it's a really impressive skill. And I'm excited because I think that, while teaching this course, I'm going to be able to improve my level in using some of these things. So there happens to be a file that contains user information. And when you guys are going through this step, you might need to edit it. So basically, to edit it, you need to use a text editor. And we're used to using Notepad++, all that kind of stuff, but we're not going to use that. We're going to use Vim. So if I go Vim, and now I'm going to type in the name of the file. So this file is in my home bash directory. So I go // .git config. Okay. So this opens up my Vim editor. And you can see here, I have a username and I have an email that I've added. And you guys are going to have to do that for your Git accounts as well. You're going to need to execute this account. Now, let's say I wanted to change basically some of the text in here. So what I need to do right now, I'm in command mode. Okay, there's sort of, I guess, two modes to Vim. There's command mode and there's edit mode. If I hit I, now I'm in what's called insert mode. So I can now actually make changes. Okay, so I can type in whatever I want, okay? And once I'm done, I can then hit escape, and now I'm back into command mode. So I can't actually type anything. All I can do, well, actually I can. Okay, I lied. Okay, so as I said, I don't have skills with, I don't have these hardcore skills. Okay, so I'm in edit mode, now I hit escape, and, okay. Anyway, there's lots of different commands. So if the other command I want to do, if you need to edit something, let's say I want to change my email address. So I would hit I, now I'm in insert mode, and now I would go up and I could change my username if I want, okay? But I don't, so I'll leave it like that. When I'm done, I'm going to hit escape, then I'm going to hit colon, and you can see the colon at the bottom, and then I'm going to hit use the Q command. Q is exit without saving. So I'm going to do that. No rights. Okay, because I made changes, it's not allowing me to do that, so I have to go. There we go. Okay, so I exit it. Now, that was a disaster, right? As you can see, I need to work on the Vim skills, the hardcore terminal skills, and it's really easy. You can just go Vim commands, okay? And basic Vim commands, all right? And you can go in and practice. And if you get good at if you like using these text editors, you can become so powerful. These are very powerful tools, and there's so many different shortcuts that you can do such quick edits. It's a very impressive thing. And when you guys, get your jobs and see this, you'll come across someone that has these kinds of skills. And it is a deadly skill to have. So I encourage you guys to get into, trying some of this stuff out. And I'm going to try to improve my skills a little bit on this as well. I'm looking forward to that. So, okay, so we did go in, you can edit a file using Vim. All right, so let's keep going with the tutorial. All right, so we've got we've just pushed the repository, we've set it up on GitHub. And now it's talking about push a branch to GitHub. Okay, did we commit a branch? So we set up the branch, but I didn't think we made any changes. Okay, I'm just looking here. I don't remember making changes on the branch. So we checked out the branch. But I didn't think we made any changes. Now switch back to the master branch, make some more commits. Okay, yeah. Your changes won't merge those. Okay. Okay, so let's just do a few things with the branches. So if I go git, oops. Okay, what did I do? Okay, so I gotta go, boom. Okay, I'm having problems with my VM. Okay, there we go. So it's Q and then the exclamation point. Okay, so I'm finally back to my my shell, and now if I go git status, I'm on branch new feature. I haven't done anything on that branch. So let's just talk about branches. We can easily switch between branches. I can go git checkout master, and now if I go git status, now I'm back on the master branch. Okay. So let's see here. What do I want to do? I think we should probably make a few edits on the new feature branch, and then we will push those we'll commit them, and then we'll push them to the remote. Okay, so let's switch back. So I'm going to go git checkout new feature. Okay, so now let's edit. Let's go back to my Vim skills. Edit, so Vim eric.txt. So here's my file. I'm going to hit I to go into insert mode, and I'm going to type in eric stock CP4472. All right, and now I'm going to hit I'm going to hit escape. So now I'm in command mode, colon. I'm going to hit WQ because I want to save it, and now I've saved my work. Now if I go git status, you see here that I've modified, it's in red, that Git knows that I've modified that file. Now, here's something cool. I can now, here's a new command. I can go git diff eric.txt. And this actually shows me what changes I've made. Now, I've only made really one block of changes, but often there will be several different blocks, and you'll see these different edits here, which basically show you each of the additions or subtractions that you've made between the two files. Okay, so I've done that. Now I'm going to go git add eric.txt. That's going to stage my change. And you can see here that now this change is staged. I'm going to now commit the change, commit -m updated eric.txt file to include new info. All right, that's been committed. Okay, so now we're ready to basically try to do what's called a merge. So if I've worked on a branch and maybe I've created a new feature, I've tested it, and it's all ready to go. Now I'm as a team member, I'm looking to have my change integrated back into the master. Okay, and the way that we can do that is we can use a command where we push this new feature branch, we'll push it to the remote repository. And then someone can review my change and decide whether it should be merged or it should be worked on more before it gets merged in. So the command I will use is git push origin my new branch. Okay, it's not my new branch though, it's new feature. Okay, so it now pushed that to GitHub. Okay. All right, so now we can go back to our remote, our GitHub, and I'll refresh this, and you'll see, except I'm not seeing anything. Okay, here we go. So I click back on the Connect 4, and basically you can see that I have a new feature here, all right? So this has now been pushed to the main repository. So let's say I went, maybe I added a new leaderboard that has all the high scores, and I've done all my work, and I'm really happy about it, and I'm hoping that the team will now basically add this to the main development. So what I need to do now is click on this button, compare and pull request. So basically this is a request that the lead programmer is now going to look at my change, and they're going to decide whether or not it's a good change and it should become part of the product. So I'm going to leave a comment and say I just completed some edits to the eric.txt file and am hoping we can merge these. Okay. And then I'm going to click this button, create pull request. So basically now there's going to be an automated process that's going to look, and it's going to check to make sure that there's no what are called conflicts. For example, maybe someone else worked on that same file. Maybe someone else deleted that file while I was working on it. And if that's the case, then I'm going to see a bunch of what are called conflicts, and I'll have to decide what to do with them. But in this case, of course, it's a simple example. There's no conflicts. And because I am the lead programmer on Connect 4, I get to decide. So basically, I can now go and I can merge this pull request, okay? Okay. Now, I probably would want to review the actual change as well. So I can look here at the change for this, this request, and I can see that these two things were added to the file. So it's very, very simple. And then I can go back to here, and I can merge my request. So I'm going to confirm that I'm going to merge this, and I should leave a comment here. So merging changes from new feature branch, and I'm now going to leave that comment. And I'm going to merge my, my change. Okay. And you'll see here, I also have an option to delete the branch. Now, because all of the changes made along that branch, they've now been merged, all the history, everything has been maintained, it's a good idea to go and delete the branch. If you have all these branches sitting around, it's kind of confusing to people looking at your repository. So I'm going to click that option to delete the branch. And now, if I go back to just the main repository, I'll now see an updated history. So I can see here that I have 3 commits on this repository now. And the first commit was I added the eric.txt file, then I updated eric.txt file to include new info, and then I merged the new feature branch into the main repository, into the master branch, the main branch that we use for development. All right, so we've done quite a bit so far. So let's go back here. So we created the pull request. This is just going through all the steps I just showed you guys. And we merged the pull request. And we deleted the branch. You can see that there. And that's pretty much it. And then we looked at the different commits that were available, and we could see all of the history was there. Now, the last thing this tutorial shows us is now we have a situation where our remote repository has edits and changes that we don't have locally. So we now want to go and grab the changes that have been done remotely and bring them into our local copy. So basically, we execute this command here, git pull origin master. So I'm going to do that. And we should be on the master branch when we do this. So I'm going to go git status, and I'm on the new feature branch. So I'm going to say git checkout. I'm going to switch to my master branch. And I've done that, and now I'm going to do this command here, git pull origin master, and now it's going to grab the latest stuff. And if I go git status, okay, nothing up to, I'm all up to date. I'm on the master branch, and if I go git log, I can now see the 3 commits that were made that are the same as what is on the GitHub repository. So I can see that I did my first commit, then I updated the Eric text file, and then I merged the text file, okay? All right, so this is a very simple tutorial we ran through really quickly. It's a good introductory one. The great thing about Git is there's so many resources online. So I encourage you guys to go and find some similar tutorials, read through them, learn some commands, get a bit more information about some of these commands, and you can practice doing some of this stuff. It's very easy on GitHub to just create a new repository, try some stuff out. You can go in and delete the repository and start over and try some more stuff, okay? There's really nothing you can do that's gonna mess anything up, except don't post any personal information. So we are making public repositories, so obviously you have to be somewhat aware of what information you're posting in your code, okay? But other than that, you can play around with it. It's very, very easy to learn, and it's a great, great skill to have. So I look forward to moving forward with this project, and probably the next video I'll post, I'll be actually beginning some JavaScript development in creating the Connect4 application, okay? Now, the applications we're gonna create in this class, one is gonna be the Connect4, and I'm gonna guide you guys through that, but you're gonna have to follow along and duplicate my steps to create your own version of this. The second one is going to be an independent project. And so you guys can start thinking about this now. Think about maybe a website or an application. It can really be anything. It doesn't have to use JavaScript. You could use Python if you want, that you're gonna create. You could use even a language that maybe you're familiar with that we don't teach or emphasize at the college. As long as it is a coding project, and this is one that we're gonna start probably around week 3. I'll have you guys basically propose a project, and once I approve it, then you'll begin using Git and GitHub to create your own project. Okay, well that's gonna be it for this video, and I'll have another video later on in the week. For now though, please go through these steps. I'd like to see you guys set up your GitHub and install Git on your local computer. Once you have your GitHub account set up, I would like you to send me the name of your account. That way I can follow your GitHub and see the progress you're making. Okay, that'll be it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.